Welcome to this video. This is my attempt of part 1, turning $0 into 10,000. Join me on my journey where I will try to utilize my skills to help other people with different tasks, as well as giving new life to old tools and machinery. The goal for this video is to motivate and inspire you to develop some new skills. Follow along to see if I manage to succeed.
Here you see the first salvage find for this video, which I picked up for free at the local scrapyard. My goal is to repair this compressor and resell it for a profit. I started out by trying to figure out why someone had discarded the tool. I quickly discovered that the regulator was broken and leaking air, so I started to remove it. Although I could find a replacement, but I'm trying to keep expenses down in order to maximize my profit. Besides, the compressor still works great for such tasks as filling your bike tire or shooting brad nails. I retrieved some tools to rearrange the fixture. On this clip you can clearly see how the thread is tangled, which I think is the main reason for the air leak. The compressor could supply air without any issue. However, the mechanical shut-off switch was not functioning properly. Fortunately, the safety valve was still operational. I tried to adjust the spring tension, which determines the pressure at which the switch will shut off. It was successful, and I only had to make a minor tweak to make sure it would stop just short of 8 bars. The compressor has been completely repaired and is now functioning perfectly, even without a regulator. Therefore, I am listing it on the local marketplace similar to Craigslist. If the compressor generates a profit, we can revisit it later in the video. So actually, I found 2 tools at the scrapyard. This one is for cutting metal, or just regular plate. And again, I listed the tool on Craigslist, and this guy bought the tool, so he could cut up some perforated plate to make some covers for his radiators. I think we got off to a pretty good start, $43. I got recommended by a previous customer. A guy reached out to me and asked if I could help him out with his motorized wheelbarrow. So I looked up my calendar and messaged the guy back. The next day he showed up and dropped off his machine. It easily fits under my apple tree and onto my deck, so I could start out the inspection and service of the machine. I started out by flipping the bucket so I easily could get access to the motor and then turning it on. The customer didn't think that the engine was running right. He also commented on the exhaust, and you can clearly see a black spot on the bucket. First off, I turned off the fuel and started investigating if there was any contamination or water at the carburetor. I cut up this plastic container so it would fit under the carburetor as I was emptying out the fuel. Here you see the lower part of the carburetor, which looks very clean. Same goes for the fuel, so basically no contamination or water to be found. I just wiped off the inside with a paper towel and reinstalled the lower part of the carburetor. Next up, I could take a look at the air filter just by unscrewing 2 wing nuts. Both the inner and the outer part of the filter was in good condition, therefore I reinstalled it. Next up, I found the correct size socket so I could remove the spark plug. It also seems to be in good condition and produced by a well-known company. I gave it a quick clean on the wire wheel and reinstalled it. I played around with the setting of the adjustment screw for the main jet to get the best mix of fuel and air. I also gave all the cables a bit of grease. Finally, I checked the level of the engine oil, which seems to be a bit too high. I leveled out the machine and checked again. The high level of engine oil could also explain the excessive smoke from the exhaust. I removed the excess engine oil by suction and restored it to the correct level. Try taking a look at the body of the machine and start resonating and in some way following the change in RPMs. The machine service is complete and Ernst, the customer, collected it the next day. I charged the guy $50 for around 45 minutes of my time and had no expenses for the service as I utilized only my tools and my pre-existing knowledge. Thus, the total amount comes to a solid $93. Here you see me preparing, servicing, filing and fueling two of my chainsaws for the next task. A close friend of mine referred his father-in-law to reach out to me. He asked for my assistance with some trees on their street and required that I fell a tree and performed heavy pruning on the rest. The task started in the morning and I got off to a great start. I felled this tree that fitted perfectly into this guy's front yard. I was worried about hitting and breaking two of his lights, but it went smoothly. The guys and the kids took care of the cleanup. I just brought my chipper and my tipping trailer. I then started the climbing and pruning process. I discovered that it is easier to use a ladder for trees with a low canopy instead of being set up by a throw line. By using two lanyards, I can safely reposition and cut with my chainsaw when I'm up the tree. I finished the job by noon, while the others were still working on cleaning up the area with the chipper and trailer. Nikolai, one of the guys, asked me to prune 3 birch trees in his garden. I think they came out looking great. Here you see one of them. Let's break down today's job. I charged them $519 for the main tree job, which include the use of my equipment on the job site. The additional task with the birch trees took around 3 hours and I charged them $173 for that. After deducting expenses for around $30 for fuel, the total profit comes to $755. Here you can see a Husqvarna chainsaw which belongs to Eric, previously mentioned father-in-law. He was using my chainsaw because his own saw wasn't running properly. Intentionally, I thought I could just adjust the low, high and idle screw with regular tools. However, I ended up having to buy a special set of screwdrivers for $29 to make the adjustment. First, let's fine-tune the low setting. I will start out by turning on the chainsaw so the engine can warm up to operating temperature. Then I will turn the idle screw up until the chain begins to run. Here you can see me turning the idle screw clockwise and then getting the low setting right. Next, I turn the idle screw counterclockwise and focus on the high setting. The saw should quickly raise in RPMs when given full throttle. After adjusting the chainsaw, it ran much better as expected. Though this task didn't bring any profit and included a minor setback due to the cost of the screwdrivers, it belonged to the father-in-law of a close friend of mine, making it worthwhile. Moreover, it improved my understanding of chainsaw adjustment, so after deducting $29 from the initial $755, we are left with $726. Here we are back on the same street as before with one last task. I began by rearranging some of the neighbors' belongings. Some might refer to it as risk management. I had a brief conversation with the customer before getting to work. I quickly decided to remove the tree in smaller sections because I assessed that there wasn't enough space to fell the tree in one piece. After mainly cutting down the canopy, I retrieved my large 22cc chainsaw to take down the remaining section of the tree. Afterwards, I proceeded to cut up the main part into manageable firewood pieces. And then the customer drew my attention to this tree that was overgrown by ivy. I followed the same procedure, taking one section at a time. Here you see a more manageable task involving the removal of 2 stumps, which will again be divided into pieces that can be used for firewood. The big chainsaw of mine makes quick work of this task. You can see me creating a grid of grooves to collect rainwater, which helps the stump to rot away faster. To fulfill the request of this customer, I pruned 2 of his birch trees. Here you see one of them. Before breaking down the cost of this task, here is a great overview of the various tasks completed for this street, complete with numerous arrows for illustration. The final task at this street took around 4.5 hours to complete. I charged the customer $255 after deducting expenses for fuel, borrowed for the chainsaw, and a few individual spare parts. We end up with a profit of $961. Okay, next up is this planer. The seller listed it for a very low price because it wasn't working. Within just a few minutes, I called the seller and had my father pick it up. Then we began investigating why it wasn't functioning. After some initial cleaning, we quickly discovered that something was missing. The plastic cap was missing, and its function is to secure one of the 2 carbon brushes in place. The brushes serves the purpose of facilitating the transfer of electric current between the stationary and rotating part of the motor, particularly the commutator, which is essential for the motor to function. After temporarily securing the carbon brush in place with a non-conducting material, the planer works again. The machine is also missing a single screw, which can easily be replaced. Next, I need to find a replacement for the plastic cap. I must admit that gluing the cap in place may not be the best long-time solution, but it should work for now, as I couldn't easily find the correct size. I managed to glue the cap in place without getting any superglue on my hands, which contain toxic isocyanate. At the time I was fixing up the planer, I noticed a similar model listed for sale at $128, which quickly sold. I believe we can achieve a better price for it. However, before selling the planer, I plan to use it for a task, making a garden gate for one of my customers. While I was fixing some gardening related stuff for a customer of mine, Eppa, she asked if I knew a good carpenter. Of course I did, and quickly suggested myself for the job. I simply just tweaked the way the hinges were mounted on the gate by making an angle cut with my battery-powered circular saw. Apart from that, the installation was straightforward. It took around 3.5 hours to make and install the gate, for which I charged $165. Minus the cost of material, we end up with a total profit of $1,111. After carefully wrapping the planer in Christmas paper and making it ready for shipping, let's break down the earnings for the last item, on which I managed to make some profit. I purchased the planer for $10, sold it for an impressive $217, including $20 in shipping fee, and though concluded part 1 of this series with a total profit of $1,351.
But wait a moment, because I actually also sold the little red compressor you saw in the beginning of this video. It generated a profit of $37, thereby ending part 1 of this series with a total profit of $1,388. So you might be wondering what I will do with this money burning a hole in my pocket until next time. Check it out, I have opened a dedicated stock account for this new series, so no more lazy capital until part 2. The total profit amounts to 9,354 Danish crowns, which is my local currency. And I will be investing it in the following week in the following products, so stay tuned. But before I let you go, please hit the subscribe button and I will see you next time. I'm telling you, please hit the subscribe button because I'm gonna be here until you're done so. And therefore, I'm gonna end off this episode of today's show. And I'm hoping that you have thought it was fun because I'm gonna see you later.